Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Weekday Somatics. Let's if possible, if it's possible to sit upright without strain, please do so. If it's not possible to sit upright without strain, then please don't strain. There are many beautiful benefits to this inquiry, and they will all come so you do not need to strain for them. You can receive them. That's at the heart of this inquiry, is to receive. It's to receive. So we set ourselves up to receive, and then we explore how it is that we are blocking that reception, so that we get clearer on how we can do less and receive more. So when I suggest that if you can sit upright without strain, that's all. It's a suggestion, it's a direction, it's a possibility. And then you need to be honest about what's the best for you in this moment to be able to receive. Whatever posture you choose, if possible, well, not, let me rephrase that. Whatever posture you choose, have the intention that you can remain at rest in this posture for the next 30 minutes. So already that requires honesty. So there's nothing about any of this that is superfluous. This is all intentional. So to take a look, to have the intention that I will remain restfully still in this posture to the best of my ability for the next 30 minutes means I must look really honestly now. Am I pushing too hard? Am I overreaching? Am I putting pressure on myself? Am I believing that if I achieve something through effort that I will be rewarded? So already just to have the intention, to be clear in the intention that I'm choosing a posture that I want to, and I'm setting the intention that I will inhabit this posture with conscious awareness, restfully still for the next 30 minutes means I'm already present. I have to be. And I have to be gentle. Because if I attempt to force myself or coerce myself or brace myself so that I can endure for 30 minutes, it won't work. So see that you can breathe in this posture. Allow the breath to flow naturally without without you exerting effort. When we exert effort beyond our capacity to do so with conscious awareness, what happens? We hold our breath. You can start to observe that in your daily life. You can notice when you're reaching for things, when you're sitting, when you're coming to stand. Just observe how you habitually hold the breath. You brace yourself. And none of that's not necessary. Out of habit, we accept that that is necessary. We also accept that that is insignificant. But I'm proposing that it's not necessary and it is significant. So we can become aware now of this restful stillness, and we can allow for the natural breath to clarify that for us. So we have set an intention for ourselves to remain restfully still in this posture, which means without strain, without enduring. We can actually experience pleasure. The pleasure of non-effort, of non-strain. This is possible for us, for all of us, every one of us, no matter what you might think, no matter what arguments you might come up with, no matter what story you have about how that's not possible for you. I promise you it's possible for you now. I absolutely promise you. There are no conditions for it. The only, if we were to say there is a condition, the only condition is to be willing to stop imposing the conditions. See that every time you have accepted these false conditions, which is so commonplace, we're taught to do that. We're taught to make excuses, to justify our constant strain. But see that none of that is necessary. And that really does get to the heart of this inquiry, to recognize that our direct experience of ourselves is restful stillness. Everything else is layered on top of that. You can observe this in your direct experience now. So we're choosing restful stillness, which means non-indulgence. So as the impulses to adjust, to fix, to distract, to look here and there, to think, to worry, as those impulses present themselves, we can observe those impulses from restful stillness. We do not need to indulge the habit of identifying with those impulses, trying to defend ourselves from the impulses, giving any attention whatsoever to the impulses other than simply to receive. Just to receive. And in this restful stillness, we can allow the natural breath to gently highlight the gripping, the way in which we habitually attempt to control the breath, to turn the breath at unnatural points, to hold the breath unnaturally. And again, this may seem insignificant, but I promise you it's very, very significant. This is a very useful insight to start to recognize how the self-effort imposed upon the breath produces the agitation that we then fight with. When you cease to produce the unnecessary agitation, there's nothing to fight with. I promise you this is true. And it's not nearly as hard as you think. It's very, very, very easy. It's just that you have a habit of interfering. You have a habit of unconsciously trying to manage the breath. And that interference with the natural breath creates a disturbed breathing pattern, which you call yourself. It's all in that disturbed breathing pattern is all of your trouble, all of it, every last bit of it. I know that seems hard to believe, but it's true. So here it's like a training ground. We're choosing to rest in stillness and observe the breath, and then simply allow that breath and notice where the interference arises, and then see that we don't need to do that. We can allow for the breath to be reshaped to its natural flow without our interference. All we have to do is observe, just observe where you interfere habitually. Depending on how disturbed the breath is, it's entirely possible that the habitual shape and placement and size of the breath may be a total mismatch for reality, the reality of the natural breath. And so it may possibly take some persistence in investigation. But I promise you, it's not as hard as you think. Just rest and observe where you introduce the unnecessary effort. Don't concern yourself with how big the breath is or how small the breath is, or if the breath seems to be in the right place or the wrong place, or if you're doing it correctly or incorrectly, or any of the other thoughts that you might have. See that all of those are based on, like everything else, just the mechanical repetition of conditioned mind. Because we have done it so many times, we think that it's right. But repetition does not make it right. As you are observing in this way, you can notice perhaps how this natural breath, as we start to ease into the natural breath, we might start to notice just how gentle it is. So very gentle. And it's so gentle that any effort can disturb it if we allow it. Any effort done without conscious awareness can disturb it if we allow. So we can just remain consciously aware, allowing the gentleness to be like to hold that gentleness, hold the gentleness of the natural breath like you would a newborn baby. allow it to reshape you rather than you shaping it. Let it shape you. And I promise you that this, as you allow for the natural breath undisturbed to reshape you, you will find that the hardness, the numbness, the strain begins to melt away. You will find that your body naturally begins to come into alignment. Naturally, you begin to receive the support that's here because you're no longer unconsciously seeking to dominate anything. Not even this gentle breath. You don't even seek to dominate the gentle breath. You're so gentle, you become so gentle yourself that even this very gentle breath shapes you. This gentle breath, it's so gentle, it can't move your bones. So it has to flow into the soft areas. It clarifies the soft areas if you allow it. Now, we can also start to observe the various ways, subtler ways, in which we introduce unnecessary disturbance. So if you have been observing in the way that I've been pointing, then certainly you have discovered a remarkable ease And the question that I am certainly curious about is it possible to remain this effortless, this flowing, this natural, this pleasurable? And to investigate that, we can look at what is it that I do that disturbs or seems to disturb this ease. So certainly there are, we could say, maybe gross level things that I can do, that you can do, that as experiments that might disturb this. To be honest with you, I don't even want to. So I don't know that I will, but I can imagine. That's enough. You can either try it out or you can just imagine it and see that maybe imagining it is enough. I could imagine holding the breath. I could imagine holding the breath as I reach for something. I could imagine holding the breath as I sit or come to standing or lying down or changing position. And I, just with that imagination, I already know, because I've done it so many times, I already know that that's a disturbance. So now let me be curious, and let us all be curious about this possibility. Can I move without holding the breath? So at this point, we're just imagining that. We don't need to actually move, but we can imagine the possibility. Could I move without holding the breath? Could I come from sitting to standing without holding the breath? What might that be like? Can I imagine that? And then here's another slightly more subtle thing to consider. Which is thought. For most of us, thought and breath are tied together. So we can observe if we just allow the breath to be natural and gentle, and we don't interfere at all, notice what happens to thought. Notice how gentle and undisturbed the thought stream becomes. If you just keep your awareness lightly on the natural breath, just observing for any impulse of interference, and then don't indulge that, so that you just continue to allow this gentle, natural breath. Notice how smooth and light and transparent the thought stream becomes. I have no desire to even dip a toe into that thought stream, because it would introduce some disturbance. And it's so pleasurable just to be still. But it's a useful exploration to see what happens. Can I have a thought? Can I give attention to a thought without disturbing the breath? Is that possible? And if I'm really honest, I don't know the answer to that. I know what mind says. But let's observe. Let's see what actually is possible. Now, we've all worried. I think that's probably safe to say. We've all worried in life. So we have memory of worry. Notice what the experience of worry is. and observe how that experience of worry differs from this restful awareness of the gentle, natural breath. Notice how the experience of worry requires disturbance. You have to disturb the natural breath. You have to introduce effort to control, coerce, or manipulate the experience through holding the breath or turning the breath at unnatural points. And notice, this is really, this is so wonderful. I think this is just a beautiful discovery and gift, that notice what happens when worry, the memory of worry, the the habit of worry, the impulse of worry is received here in this undisturbed stillness. If you don't indulge the habit of going unconscious and gripping or turning or controlling the breath, but instead you just remain aware of the gentleness of the natural breath, allowing it to move completely uncontrolled, notice what happens to the worry, to the impulses, the habits, the memories. Same applies to any disturbance, fear, anxiety, resentment, jealousy. Now, I want to pose a possibility to you. That possibility is that we can move from this stillness so that our movements don't disturb this stillness or this gentleness, because they are completely aligned with this gentleness. Now, how is that possible? There's only one way in which I'm aware of that that's possible. Look right now at your direct experience of yourself. Notice that you are this stillness. You are this ease. You are complete non-effort. And to be clear, I'm not asking you to take that on as a belief. I'm inviting you to look directly and recognize that right now. It's very simple, very, very, very simple. You don't need to think it. You don't need to believe it. You don't need to have an image for it. You don't need to refer to past for it. You don't need to worry about maintaining it into the future. All you need to do is just look so gently, so lightly right now, and just acknowledge the truth. And what's possible is to then recognize this simple truth even as we transition into more activity, even as we transition into more outward focus, more movement. It's possible to remain aware of this vastness that is our most intimate experience of ourselves. We can't step outside of it to see it as an object, but it's here. It's something that we have a direct experience of. And if we continue to tell the truth about it, and if we consciously make this transition so that we don't leap from this restful stillness and our conscious recognition of it into our habits, but instead we remain gentle, aware of the natural breath, aware of the impulses and habits of strain, control, manipulation, and we don't indulge them. What I promise you is possible. I promise you because it's possible for me. And I'm not superhuman. So I know beyond doubt that it's possible for you right now. It's possible for all of us to remain just lightly, gently aware and to not indulge the habits of manipulation and control and effort and strain. And in so doing, we just naturally remain aware of this deeper truth of ourselves. And we have a real experience, a true experience. Please understand, I'm not suggesting that this is a fantasy that you need to buy into. This is a real experience that is available. It's actually more real than all of the other experiences that we call real. It's not fantasy. It's not made up. It's not in mind. It's a real experience. It's the real experience of yourself. It's available to you now. There are no conditions for it. And this real experience is truly unconditional. We set the conditions for the exploration so that we can see it clearly, because there's so much disturbance, so much habit of disturbance that we overlook it. So we want to allow for the disturbance to settle so that we can look clearly, then just remain true to that. Recognize that this stillness is here and that everything is in this stillness. There's nothing separate from the stillness. There's nothing that is other than this stillness. There's nothing that can disturb this stillness. So if your eyes are closed still, then just allow them to remain closed for another minute. And become aware of the room you are in, or wherever you are, the space around you, around your body. Become aware of your body. Become aware of the skin. Notice that none of that disturbs this stillness. Become aware of whatever sensations might present themselves. And notice that none of the sensations disturb the stillness. This is very important because we usually have it the other way around. But the stillness is primary. You've had an experience of that, a recognition of that. So remain true to that. The stillness is primary. Don't believe your habitual ideas about what these sensations mean. Instead, recognize that these sensations have no power to disturb stillness. And if your eyes are closed, then very slowly, gently begin to open the eyes and notice that it's possible to do so without disturbing the stillness. And when you're ready, also begin to slowly with awareness, move your fingers. Notice that you can move the fingers without disturbing stillness. Allow the breath to remain undisturbed as well. And then as you are doing the activities of your day, just notice that it's possible to do them without disturbing the breath, and find out how pleasurable it can be. Find out how pleasurable it can be to move without effort, without holding the breath, without reinforcing all of the wrong habits, the wrong beliefs. You can find so much pleasure in the simplest things. Maybe the greatest pleasure is simply not to get involved. I'm going to end the recording of the formal inquiry momentarily. For those who are here live, we'll stay on for the Q&A. For those who are watching the recording, please be very gentle. This was a very deep inquiry. So be loving to yourself. Receive the benefits and continue to allow the benefits to blossom in your experience.